The sky over the small town of Jackson was turning heavy gray as the streets were advancing, relatively empty as if rain had warned people of that it was better to stay at home. Was not a particularly memorable day, but for Alan O'Brien the shift at the police station was about to take an unexpected turn. To the 25 years Alan served as a police officer for 3 years with a mixture of determination and sometimes a touch of arrogance. He grew up in the suburbs in a house of middle class where racial tensions were part of the whisper diario quace. Imperceptible, but always present, Alan carried a certain air of self-satisfaction, a product of his youth and success. Initial in strength, he was tall with short blonde hair and blue eyes, penetrance that could freeze anyone who didn't know his side. Softer, but there was a shadow inside, a doubt he couldn't, that sometimes led him to act harshly, unnecessary, and on that day that shadow guided him toward a young man walking on the south side of the city, a neighborhood known for its population predominantly African American. Mateus was a man of 33 years with a robust constitution and a calm demeanor. He had worked hard to get to where I was and wasn't the kind who allowed himself to be intimidated easily. His black skin glowed with the reflection of moisture in the air, and its features were marked by a mixture of pride and humility, as if every step he takes, it was a reminder of the struggles he had overcome to become who he. Matthew Era grew up in a church where his devout mother raised him under the principles of faith and justice. Since at a very young age he learned that dignity of a man was not defined by his color, but for how he faced the adversity while walking to his destination dressed in a dark suit that accentuated his elegant. Matthew noticed a car of police slowly approaching by the street. The sound of the siren, silent, more insinuating, made him turn the head in a gesture of curiosity and caution. Alan at the wheel watched Mateus with calculating eyes. For Alan, just to see a well-dressed walking in a neighborhood like that was reason enough to investigate. Where do you think you're going to? Yell Alan at the get closer. Matthew stopped, surprised by Tom, remained calm, knowing that any wrong move could be interpreted in the worst way. Good afternoon, cop. I'm going to a meeting, he replied politely, though a flash of annoyance crossed his eyes. Alan got out of the car and approached Matthew, his boots echoing on the pavement. Damp height difference between them, it was evident, but the difference in power perceived was even bigger. Alan looked at it with up and down, examining your suit, watch, and finally your face, as if look for some sign of guilt. A meeting, huh? And what kind of meeting would it be? You don't look like this one. Mateus took a deep breath, controlling the anger that began to boil inside him. Was not the first time he was stopped without reason, but this time there was something different in the air, a feeling that the things could get worse quickly. Is a police business meeting, I don't think, necessary to stop me for that. Alan let go a short, humorless laugh that echoed on the walls of the surrounding buildings. Work, of course, I know what it's like. Show me an identity. And Matthew quickly nodded, slowly took out his wallet with deliberately slow movements, being careful not to give it to Alan to act against him. He handed over his identity by observing, while Alan scrutinized Chris. Matthew. Alan mumbled, and where do you say that works? Before Matthew could answering, a voice from Alan's radio interrupted the tense moment. It was a urgent call from the police station, or apparently all the police officers were needed back immediately because something important was about to. Alan played the identity of returns to Matthew with a gesture of disdain. Look, get out of here before I change, Alan said before turning around and back to his car. Matthew took his identity of the ground while maintaining its impassive expression, though inside felt the burn of humiliation in the. However, instead of retorting or making a sarcastic comment, he turned and continued on his way. He knew that the real moment of justice would arrive. Coming soon the next morning, the police station was full of a palpable nervousness. Rumors flew among the police. Something big was going to happen. Alan arrived and was greeted with furtive glances from him. Colleagues talking in whispers, almost inaudible. His boss, Captain Robert, a middle-aged man with gray beard and deep voice, was normally reserved in the last days, and now the reason for this behavior was about to be revealed. Attention officers, meet in the conference room, ordered Captain Robert without raising the voice but with a tone that wouldn't let space for discussion. Alan followed his fellow police officers into the room, feeling a slight tingling in the back of my neck. He hadn't done anything out of the ordinary, except for the incident with the black man in the southern part of the city, but that wasn't. The police always had something new. Encounters like this, especially in a city like Jackson when everyone was. When the Captain Robert gathered his throat to get their attention, I want everyone know that today we will receive a new chief of police, he announced, leaving the penetrating the minds of the gifts. Alan felt attention in the room. He's someone who worked hard to get here, and I'm sure will make major changes in our unit. So I want everyone to receive it with the respect he deserves. The murmurs himself intensified a new meaning. Changes for some. This was not exactly something Alan was waiting for. Was particularly anxious for his position in the team was solid, but a new boss could mess up this. Finally, stability. The door of the room opened and the new head of police. Murmurs have ceased. Immediately all eyes turned to the approaching figure. With firm steps was Chris Mateus, dressed with his impeccably dark suit, the same man that Alan had humiliated in the afternoon before. Alan's expression went from confusion to disbelief and then to a mixture of fear and shame. Matthew walked up to the front of the room, his gaze sweeping each of the police officers who were watching him with a mixture of surprise and respect. When his eyes met Alan's, he kept his composure but couldn't avoid the slight smile that formed in your lips. Good morning, gentlemen. Matthew started with a firm voice. I'm Chris Mateus, and from today on I will be your new chief of police. Know some of you, they know me, and hopefully with time we all know each other better. Action in the room could be cut with a knife. Alan was completely motionless, trying to process what was going on. Your mind raced for 1,000 times, repeating every detail of your meeting Matthew the day before. He felt trapped, unsure about how to get out of the situation in which Matthew got himself. Continued talking to his calmer, Tom more authoritarian, exposing his vision for strength police officer and his plans to improve the community relations. As he spoke, he did not lose his expression in the Alan's face, a man who now understood the weight of his actions. But Matthew wasn't a man. Vengeful mother always taught him that true strength is in compassion and in the ability to forgive. And for those who are wondering, yes, I do. In Jackson, I have known well for many years this city, its problems and solutions that we can implement together. I want you to know that I'm here to work with you, not against you. Matthew concluded, pausing to leave your words penetrate the minds of their new subordinates, but I also want them to know that I will not tolerate any form of discrimination or abuse of power. This is a new beginning for all of us. Matthew took one last look at Alan, that wasn't filled with resentment, but with something much more powerful. It disappears. Opportunity, the opportunity to learn, grow and redeem himself. However, he does not. Said nothing directly to him, or it wasn't necessary what Alan felt at that moment. It was much deeper than any word of rebuke. I know. The farewell was uncomfortable. They started to leave the room one by one, murmuring to each other. Alan remained seated, unable to move. His mind kept repeating the meeting from the day before like a record. Broken, he had never felt a weight so big on your conscience. The captain, Robert, approached him and put his hand on his shoulder. Was a friendly gesture, but also warning, you better talk to him. Alan, he said calmly, this is your time to show what kind of man you are. Alan nodded slowly. Knowing he was right, he stood up with effort and left the room. In the corridor, it was almost empty, but in the distance he saw Matthew walking toward his new office. He couldn't put off anymore. Lord Matthew, he called, and his voice sounded strangely weak. Matthew stopped and turned slowly to Alan for a moment. Time seemed to stop. Your eyes met once again, but this time, once there was no barrier of authority. Among them only two men, one trying to find the right words and the other willing to listen. Want me sorry for yesterday, Alan said, his voice full of sincerity. I had no idea who you were, and I behaved in a way unforgivable. I am, and I am embarrassed. Matthew looked at him in letting Alan's words calm down. I don't care who it was yesterday, Alan. What matters to me is who you are today. Matthew at last replied, his firmer, gentle tone. We all make mistakes, but the important is how we face. I'm willing to let it go on the side, but I need to know if you too. Alan nodded, feeling a big weight being lifted off the chest. Yes, sir. Matthew reached out, and Alan, he squeezed tightly, feeling the strength and the heat in the grip of Matthew. At that moment, Alan knew that his life and career were about to change forever. He had learned a lesson that doesn't just shape your future in the police, but also his role in society as a man capable of recognize your mistakes and grow from them. And so, friends, we learn that the true strength is not in the power that we exercise, more in the humility with which we accept our faults and in willingness to change for the better, because at the end of the day we all have the ability to be something greater than our past mistakes. What you learned from the story of today, write to me in the comments, and make sure you subscribe to the channel. This other video in your screen will also entertain you.